Well, cool. Thanks for allowing me to be here today. It's my pleasure, honestly. I haven't been to a Kiwanis meeting in probably almost like a year and a half. We used to come when I was an alumni, so it's good to be back. So today, Craig asked me to speak a little bit about recruiting and where we're at and future and programs and all kinds of stuff about Northwestern. So I promise I won't be too long or anything like that, but we'll give you some great details. But look, before I speak, I actually brought some of these. So young can pass these around. I brought view books so you can kind of see where we're at currently. These are prospective view books that we give every student that we talk to. So it has all of our program information, details, all that sort of stuff. But let me give you a little quick office background about our university recruiting office. So we have 5 in-state recruiters that are geographically based through areas around the state: Southwest Louisiana, Central Louisiana, North Louisiana. We have Baton Rouge and North Shore, and then New Orleans area recruiters, right? And then we have 1 out-of-state that focuses on out-of-state regions like Texas, Arkansas, Mississippi, our bread and butter around that, our 5-hour radius, right? And then we have a couple assistant directors that focus on transfer students and graduate students, and then 1 specifically over our Louisiana Scholarship College that focuses on our honors college at Northwestern that was established almost 30 years ago, or a little over 30 years ago. And then we do have a vacant position for events and marketing, which I do, because that's so fun to do the director job and things like that, right? We also have a graduate assistant and as well as a bunch of student workers in our office that are part of our ambassador program that gives tours to incoming students each and every day. So our office is stacked full of people, and they're wonderful. And so I joined the team almost a year ago. Which, if you do the math, that's right when COVID really hit. So what a great time to join as director of recruiting. And because honestly, it was a ginormous culture shift. But I saw it as a challenge and something that we wanted to really accomplish together as a team. And for us, we really shifted our culture in the office to a more servant leader-based culture, to where we're leading through others and really putting ourselves out there and putting in the hard work that's necessary to get where we need to be. So let's talk a little bit about COVID, because that's really shifted the whole recruiting game as a whole. The second I took this position, all schools were shut down throughout the entire state and everywhere, honestly, and didn't open for quite some time. And if you're familiar with recruiting and what we do college fairs all around the state and in our different regions. Those are set up by the parishes through our LACRO body, which is basically a governing body for recruiting events and sanctioned events. Through LACRO, all those events were immediately shut down for the next year, and all schools were closed. And they basically said, all right, guys, it's on you to figure this out. So that was really fun, but it allowed us to be really innovative, which was my goal to start with anyway. So to really change what we're doing and bring us into the 21st century a little bit. And, you always hear about the silver linings of COVID and things like that. And this was definitely one of them for us. It allowed us to really embrace technology. One of the things we really haven't looked into were virtual visits and meeting with people via Zoom. I mean, like this is recorded right now for all the masses to see, right? You wouldn't have saw this, a year and a half ago. So for recruiting, I mean, we really embraced it. We immediately got with our IT folks and we set up the ability for a student to go to our website, click a button, and schedule a meeting that would immediately go to our Outlook calendars without us even having to talk to someone. It saw when we were busy, when we had conflicts, all that went on, and it alerted us, and we showed up to the meeting whenever it was scheduled. That allowed us direct communication with students. You just have a 20-minute meeting to assess the students, see what their goals were, what they wanted to do, and have a recruiting session with them. We really haven't done any of that before. We just did that on the road, face-to-face, via tours. So that allowed us to really expand who we were, and that for a while really sustained us. We were also one of the only schools in the state that continued tours in person, which a lot of schools shut down tours. We said we can still do it, we'll just do it the safe way, right? And that entailed us figuring that out. We did a lot of open air golf cart tours. We did, if someone didn't want to be around other people or they wanted to remain masked up, we allowed them to follow us in a vehicle, and we turned on our speakerphone and connected with the vehicle behind us as we gave a campus tour. So we were definitely of the mindset of this is okay, we'll figure it out. And we felt like the most innovative university will prevail with numbers, right? And on top of that, we boosted our social media game. And I'll be the first to tell you right now, most high school students, They're seeing all their information through Instagram and Twitter, right? They're not on Facebook because all of you guys are on Facebook, so they don't want to be there. So their moms, their dads, so they're on Instagram. So for us too, it was the best social media game is going to win out in the end. So we did some great content, original content. We did panels, we did live streams, we did everything we could think of to really get us through that COVID period. So it was definitely an interesting time period, but some of that we still embrace as we move towards schools opening. Now, some of these schools are only opening a month ago, right? So that's how long some of these parishes have been closed. When you look at the state and hotbeds, New Orleans has been closed for quite some time and still closed to certain activities. So it's really been an interesting deal. But for us, our tours have never slowed down. We've consistently done 5 to 6 tours a day for the last 6 months, which is a really good thing. And for us, when everyone always asks about numbers, like throughout this uncertain period, we're always like, hey, we don't know how we feel yet about numbers, but if anything, these people that are coming each and every day to learn about Northwestern, that's a good thing, right? So that really sustained us over time. So along with this COVID came new COVID admission requirements. The state basically said, hey, a lot of these students, because of COVID, because of school closures, they hadn't had direct access to testing and ACT services. So they basically shifted our requirements, which you don't have to have an ACT test to come to a university in the state of Louisiana. That allowed us to really open our doors to students that we would have never typically talked to because of ACT scores. So now that still affects your aid, right? You can come into Northwestern without a score and a decent GPA from high school. But that doesn't get you tops. You have to have that 20 on the ACT to still get tops and still get access to our scholarships at Northwestern. So you can come in the doors. It's just not necessarily equitable for aid as well. So it's a really interesting thing that we really had to shift towards because that opened up our pool. But at the same time, how are we doing those students a service that may not have a great test score? How are we going to make sure they succeed at Northwestern because they never would have had the ability to come in our doors in the first place? So now that they're here, how are we going to give them the mentorship they need, the academic services they need, the tutoring services that maybe help them along the way as well? So it's definitely interesting, but allowed us to shift that conversation with some of our partners on the campus to aiding these students once they come through our doors here in the fall, because that's when they'll be here. We haven't even had orientation yet. Our first session's here about a month and a half away. So we're still in the middle of things right now. So the really cool thing too is that we relied on the other people on campus to really help us out. The first person we called was Drake Owens in the Alumni Center, and we said, hey, and you heard my background, I worked in alumni affairs, so I kind of knew the game a little bit. I was like, hey, Drake, we got alumni all over the state. Some of these schools aren't letting us in. Where do we have principals? Where do we have assistant principals? Where do we have teachers? Give us some ins that we can get in and maybe kind of like that back route, right, that we're not actually going in through the front doors. And man, so many alumni helped us out. We did virtual Zooms with classes of people that alumni happened to teach in some small lower town in West Louisiana. We just made it work. So it allowed us to really look at different things. On top of that, we really jumped on this niche style recruiting of finding different areas that pipelining students in makes sense, right? And you may have seen some of those on our social media channels. Some of those, if you're keeping up with Facebook and Instagram, Nettles, I know you're all over Instagram. But one of the big signings we have been doing here, the fishing team, right? So one of the big things, if you didn't know, Northwestern, our girl to guy ratio is 3 to 1 because of our traditional female majors like education and nursing, right? So one thing we always look for is how do we get more male students here, right? And one of those was the fishing team. So we started setting up basically all these signings around the state and really boosting the fact that we have collegiate fishing and we offer scholarships for it, right? So all of a sudden, man, these fishermen are knocking on our doors like crazy. And if you haven't seen, we've signed so far this year 6 fishermen ranging from, I just went to John Curtis last Thursday for a quick signing in New Orleans, all the way for one we're about to go sign next week at East Texas, which is the hotbed of fishing right now. You're talking about these tournaments have 300 anglers per tournament, right? So we'll be at the state championships here in the next week or so, and over in Morgan City for Louisiana Bass Nation, and then Cross Lake for MLF fishing. So it's definitely, I learned so much about fishing in the last year. It's unreal. I'm a Cajun boy at heart. I was born in the Bayou Teche, so I knew some of it, but it's definitely, I learned a lot very quickly. So it's interesting when we start setting up these pipelines of who also will follow. The other pipeline, you've probably seen it, is the esports pipeline that we set up. That's the revision of Dr. Maggio and a lot of others around institution that's like, hey, what's next? Like, how do we break into something that not a lot of other schools are doing? And that's esports. We launched the largest facility in the state, in the old bookstore. If you haven't seen it yet, man, it's awesome. It'll blow your mind. I mean, you walk in and see all these 26 computers lined up and these PS4s and Xboxes and Switches and all these TVs, and you're just like, where am I? Like, am I still in that? It's just as crazy. But we launched that as the biggest facility. We're awarding scholarships for students to play esports, right? But that's not where that stops. That's going to be developed into a program. We already sent the concentration through a business school to the Board of Regents for a concentration in esports management through business, and that'll further develop into hopefully a major of esports facility management, tournament management. It's $1 billion industry that's taken off globally. So why not get in on that? And we sent a message pretty quick, and now other schools are scurrying to build their facilities right now. And you can see it around the state, the ripple effect that has had. But we've already signed 2 students as the first 2 recipients, and we're just lined up another one today. So it's pretty cool to see how that has taken effect. And, that's a whole another niche style recruiting that, it's during COVID, they still play video games, right? So it's interesting to see that kind of manifest into what it is today. But we also had some of these programs already set up that had really just helped us pipeline more students in. You are probably familiar with our AMT, our Advanced Manufacturing Technician program. If you're not, it's a program developed with CLTCC and the Go Fame Network that allows us to, it's a 2-year program for an associate's degree at Northwestern that allows a student to come in to work 3 days at a local manufacturer like Alliance in our network. And then the other 2 days, they're in the classroom from 8 to 5. They finish in 2 years with a degree, an associate's degree from Northwestern, a FAME certificate, as well as a CLTCC certificate. And hopefully, if they played their cards right over the 2 years, a full paying job that they get paid the entire time they're in this program, by the way, making $12 an hour or above. So we already had cohorts like that set up. But now during COVID, it's even more meaningful because now we know exactly where we're going with students. We know how to pipeline them in. And that's really, we already have 5 set up for this upcoming cohort. And to make that the biggest, we only need to attract 2 more. So I'm trying to, my goal is to bust the seams on all these programs, right? To make sure that we have more students than necessary so we can grow these programs to even further heights and bring in more manufacturing partners, right? And I keep doing this because Craig's at Alliance. Other programs too, like Call Me Mister. If you're not familiar with that, it's a program that we started. We had our first cohort in this past year. This is something that we're growing right now. It's a program based out of Clemson University that we adopted. It's a program for African-American male students from lower socioeconomic status backgrounds. It allows us to bring them in, their education majors, that we teach them all the great things about teaching. They're in a cohort together, they learn together, they get a mentor, they get extra financial aid from Northwestern, and then we put them back in their communities to help further education within their communities. It's such a great program. Right now, our pool of those is about 35 students. We can only take 5. So it's really cool to see that manifest just in a year to see where we're at now. So hopefully we can expand seats on programs like that. But it's been my true belief that all of our niche style programs has really gotten us through this COVID mentality because we already had these strategic pathways set up. So I'm gonna go straight to new programs and initiatives that we have at Northwestern. You may have seen some of these, or maybe not. Some of these we're still talking about now, and we're almost about to launch some of these, so it's pretty cool. So you get a sneak peek a little bit, right? So today we'll actually have a meeting as soon as I'm done here for a new initiative to attract. It's a diversity and inclusion initiative to attract Native American and American Indian students to Northwestern. We feel as though there are a lot of federal and state recognized tribes. Heck, we even have a campus in Marksville and an agreement with Tunica Biloxi tribe as well. So we feel like there are so many ways that we can attract these students to our campus, all these American Indian, Native Americans in Louisiana, but also set up these MOUs, agreement style with these tribes to basically say, hey, this is maybe some extra aid that we can produce on top of just being a normal student with an ACT score, right? This is additional aid through this agreement on top of us helping you with maybe some federal and state recognized tribal dollars and things like that. And hopefully this will allow us to set up some programs under our social sciences for things like Native American studies and American Indian studies to allow some of these students to come here, learn, and then maybe go back to their tribes to really help the future of those tribes as well. We're in it just to be a helpful partner and to really showcase, hey, we have these resources, we're able to give this aid out. So let's have a mutual understanding of how that's going to work. So we have a great meeting today. We've been working with Ms. Pat over at the Indian Affairs in the Governor's Office to really help us understand what that looks like. and help us understand who those partners may be at the tribe. So it's a really exciting initiative that, we have so many great people in Northwestern, between Dr. Gregory, Dr. Rial, who's with us. Dr. Gregory's been in 61 years. He's like our oldest tenured employee. You kill me for saying that on this Zoom right here. But it's their expertise that's going to allow us to set up these partnerships and move forward with, some of these further recruiting pipelines as well. If you haven't seen, we just launched a new certificate in remote systems science and technology, which is going to allow a certificate for drone usage. This could be terrestrial drones, this could be underwater drones, aerial drones. That's something so new, and it came about in a unique way, because after the hurricane happened, you had basically all this damage around us, and you saw SWEPCO set up their headquarters at Northwestern through that entire time, as well as some other electrical providers. It was through that time that they were on campus that we just started asking questions. We were so fascinated by the fact that their home base, it was insane. The fact that they moved so many people and so many things in one area on campus. So we toured us around and we saw all that, and we're just like, hey, how are you assessing all this damage? And they're like, drones. It used to be where you have to just walk out and see a telephone pole that's down, or or an electrical line that's down, and that's all they saw was that line of sight. But now they use drones to fly in after damages to really showcase from the air on what's down and how to repair that. So we're like, man, okay, well, who's actually doing that education piece? So that's how we develop this, is as a way for our students to get this certificate to hopefully pipeline into companies that are right in our backyard to help out with some things like that. And that's what's one of our strategic goals at Northwestern, is being market responsive. And that's what that means, is really figuring out the needs of our local area, our rural area, or even our region and state, and then figure out how do we build programs around that. And that's just one instance that happened because of a tragedy, but at the same time, we can move forward and hopefully help out in further cases like that. We just launched, we're on our first cohort of our new nurse anesthetist program as part of our Doctor of Nursing Practice degree, which is such a great degree. And our nursing school has always been top in the state, one of the largest in the nation. And we have the ability to do our clinical sites in Natchitoches and Shreveport, and also Alexandria. And we launched that DNP program a couple of years ago. So it's like, how do you keep pushing that envelope farther? And that's one example of that. Those nurse anesthetists, man, it's such an attractive program. They're leaving that program making, $130,000 a year plus, depending on where they land. It's crazy, right? Like, yeah, I'm sure it's over to, depending on bigger markets, you're 250. Depending on large scale markets, it's huge, right? So it's how do we again have that partnership with some of these big hospital partners that we have in Shreveport and LA? How do we pipeline them in again, right? So we started that, and our first cohort's already full, and the second one, people are just chomping at the bit to get on the list, right? So it's again, how do you be market responsive in your backyard to really understand how to recruit, in a different age through COVID and through a lot of other things. But it's also sticking with our bread and butter, because we were founded as a teaching college originally, Louisiana Normal, right, back in the day, old Normal School. And education is still one of our front running programs. And we're still, one of those top teacher leading schools. But it's through looking at innovative partnerships with cost and how to cut down on some of that. So even through our alt cert program, which it's now labeled the prep program, that teachers can come in for an alt cert and pay a flat rate tuition of $5,000. It's $5,040, but $5,000 for an 18 credit hour certificate to become an alternate certified teacher. We're far now less cheaper or more cheaper than all of our competition around us, which, we did that through some market analysis, and we just wanted to really, hey, how can we give this product and be competitive, but, also help our local school board with some of these alternate certifications that either these long-term subs need, or, some other teachers that are just looking for a different pathway. So again, just being market responsive in that. So I say all that to say, just a little taste of what we offer and the unique ways we're doing things. But the good news is, year on year, admit rate, we're 13% up right now from last year. And that's through multiple things like hurricanes and winter storms, and through a pandemic, and through everything else. That equates to 324 students, that 13% that we're up on. We're looking at about 2860 is what that number is, if you're wondering numbers. So 13% up, man, I call it a win right now. Now, the big thing that we need to focus in on is closing that deal with those students, right? Because I think the world is a little apprehensive to move forward, whether it's putting deposits down on housing or coming to orientation this summer, right? People are just apprehensive to spend money or to maybe, hey, is the world going to be normal again or close to normal again in the fall? Because there's just so many things out there that just go through people's minds. So we're there every step of the way and helping our future students through that and their families. That's what it's about, is being there one-on-one. And that's what Northwestern has always been about, is that personal connection. And we will, I'm sure you saw the press release, we will be as close to normal as possible this fall, getting away from those hybrid style classes. We'll still offer them, but it's going to be few and far between, because we do believe we've been able to successfully mitigate all of the COVID measures throughout the last year. And we've did that through very, very little COVID cases on campus. So we feel like we set the bar, and we're going to continue that this fall through more traditional style learning, which is great. But I even wrote down some numbers just to show you. I mean, last month we did 78 tours in the month of March. We already have 70 projected for this month. And that's, we just started. So I think from my point of view, our future is bright. And it's because of us being innovative and looking at things through a different lens. And I think sometimes you have to take a step back before you can take a step forward. And that's honestly what we've done in our office. But I think we're only scratching the surface. And I look forward to our future and how we grow. But it's also through great partnerships like this today. I mean, we have such a great town-gown relationship with Natchitoches and our surrounding areas. And for us, that means everything to us. The fact that I can come to a Kiwanis meeting and really talk about this, and you understand that without Natchitoches, there's no Northwestern, and without Northwestern, there's no Natchitoches, right? And that's important, and that's why I included the other things I do in the community, because if we're not investing in our community from the Northwestern standpoint and vice versa, that partnership's not there. And it's, I fully expect when I leave this meeting to, over the next year, see emails and text messages and phone calls from you guys and say, hey, man, like I heard something that I have something maybe a student might enjoy doing, or I know a family member, or I know we do those referrals probably 10 times a day. So please send us people that you know, because that's how we thrive at Northwestern, off that personal connection. So please, let us know if you have someone in mind for some programs, and we'll make sure we take great care of them. So I wanted to be as concise as possible, as brief as possible. I didn't want to go too long. I was worried about Nettles falling asleep today. But thank you all so much for allowing me to be here. And I'd definitely love to answer any of your questions. I know it's probably the end of the recording today, but as always, before I finish, fork of demons. So thank you guys.